Hey self-publishing navigators, I'm travel humour writer Simon Michael Pryor. A year ago, I self-published my first travel humour book, The Coconut Wireless. This video is about some tips and tricks that I've learnt in the year since then. So this is my first travel book, The Coconut Wireless, which is about a trip that my girlfriend Fiona and I took to the Pacific Islands of Tonga in 1996. I self-published it on the 15th of March 2021, and since then it's sold thousands of copies, it's had hundreds of thousands of Kindle Unlimited page reads, it's remained near the top of many of the Amazon categories that I put it in, and it's received over 100 star ratings. In November 2021, I published a sequel called The Scenic Land Radio, and I'm currently working on the third book in the series. But what have I learnt since I started my self-publishing journey? Well, here's my top 10 tips and tricks to help you.
Number 1.
How many people believe their friends and family are going to be their biggest supporters? You'd be amazed at the excuses some of your friends and family will come up with for not buying your book. Some of the things I've heard are, I don't have a Kindle, I don't have time to read, or here's an absolute classic that I love, I'm not going to buy this book, but once you've written a few, I might start buying them. Here's the interesting thing. While your direct friends and family might not be your biggest supporters, and hey, they might be, you might find that somebody you've barely spoken to in 10 years, but you just happen to have on your Facebook, buys every single one of your books and recommends them to your friends. So you never know which ones of your friends and family are going to be your supporters. So don't be disappointed if your brother-in-law doesn't buy your book, but do be ready for the fact that somebody you worked with 15 years ago, who you've kept in the tiniest of touches with, will buy your book and buy your next book and keep buying them and keep telling their friends.
Number 2.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. This is something that so many people said to me before I started self-publishing, and I didn't really understand what it meant. I mean, in race terms, we all know what a marathon is, right? It's a race that takes hours, whereas a sprint is a race that can take 10 seconds. But a sprint takes 10 seconds and it's all over within 10 seconds, whereas a marathon keeps going for a very long time. And here's the thing about self-publishing books, is that you need to keep your sales consistent over a long period of time. So it's no good having a book which sells 100 copies straight out of the gate and then doesn't sell any more ever. Much better to have a book which sells one copy a day and keeps selling one copy a day. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to maintain momentum. So when your book first comes out, it's a big bang whiz of publicity. You put things on Facebook, you tell your friends, they tell their friends if you're lucky, that sort of thing. But that activity has a finite end. You've only got a certain number of friends on Facebook. And in order to keep the marathon going, you have to sell to strangers. Now, this video isn't about marketing, but you need to find what works for you and keep doing it. So a marathon, not a sprint. Just keep going. And this is hard work. You have to do it maybe every day. It's a lot of things to do, and you have to be prepared for the hard work to start once your book is written and published.
Number 3.
Imagine a car manufacturer that only makes 1 or 2 models of cars. Well, there actually is one, and here's a picture of it. This car is called an Abarth. It's a very, very fast racing car, 2-seater racing car, convertible. It's a really lovely car that goes very, very well. Hey, I should know, I drive one. Here's another car. It's called a BMW. Now, BMWs, to my mind, are not quite as good cars as Abarths. But here's the thing. I bet you've heard of BMW. You may not have heard of Abarth. Why? Because Abarth only makes 2 models of car. BMW, over the years, has made tens of models of car. So in order to sell a book, you need to write another book, and then maybe another book, and then maybe another book, and keep going. Just like BMW has kept going with model after model after model, whereas Abarth has stopped after 2. I hope that analogy worked for you.
Number 4.
This is a bit of a weird one. The industry conditions us that a lower price equates with more sales. So there are various tools that you can use on Amazon to discount your book or even give it away for free in the anticipation that you're going to sell more books and therefore make more revenue overall. But here's the weird thing that I found. I started selling my ebooks at $3.99 on the Amazon US site. I experimented with pushing the price up to $4.99 and strangely, I actually sold more books. I've kept the price at $4.99 ever since, and I haven't noticed any dip in sales. So a lower price doesn't always equate to more sales, and you might find that by putting your price up $1 or wherever you feel it can sit comfortably, you'll actually make more money off the same number of sales or an even greater number of sales.
Number 5.
Memoir is a very, very teeny tiny genre, and just to complicate matters, it is subdivided into multiple sub-genres. So you have, for instance, travel memoir, like I write. Then you might have a memoir about relocating or moving to another country. You might have memoir about some sort of addiction that a person's been through, like drugs or alcoholism, some sort of terrible upbringing they've had, or a memoir about somebody who's done an interesting type of job, like a politician or a policeman or something. A memoir is anything that can be about a section of somebody's life. But as I said, it's a tiny little book genre, and you can't rely on your experiences in memoir to be able to help you with all of the things you need to know about writing and publishing books. So I strongly recommend that you get to know authors in other genres who are maybe writing fiction. You watch some YouTubes from people in other genres, totally unconnected to what you're writing. Now, one of my favorite YouTubers is a lady called Meg Latour, and she publishes YouTube under the name iWriterly. She actually writes in science fiction, steampunk romance. Okay, yes, that is a real genre. I strongly recommend you have a look at some of the videos that she produces and have a look at what she's doing in her fiction world and try and apply some of that to your books that you're writing in your non-fiction memoir world. I've done that, I've enjoyed it, and I've had some success with that. Just a brief pause here. If you're enjoying this video and you're finding it useful, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Thank you very much.
Number 6.
Who's making money out of writing? Well, in our genre, the memoir genre, it's probably only one person or two people. It's Bill Bryson or Chris Stewart. I'm not sure if he even makes any money anymore. But people who have a massive following, probably traditionally published. Memoir writers probably are never going to become able to make a full-time income out of their memoir writing without having something else that bolts onto it. So it might be a top-up for your retirement income, it might be a top-up for your day job, but it's probably never going to be enough to be able to survive on without some other stream of income too. So if you want to make full-time income out of your writing, you need to write to market. And writing to market means you need to find out what sort of books people are reading. You need to then write a book that they want to read, and you need to self-publish it. And that probably means that you're going to have to get into the romance genre or into the crime genre. You're probably not going to do it in memoir. Just a bit of a reality check.
Number 7.
This sort of links back to my first point about friends and family. You never know who's going to become your biggest allies in the author world. You might believe originally that somebody who writes in a similar genre to you or similar books. It might be someone who writes something completely different, but they just love your books. Now, I've got some authors on Facebook who recommend my books to others all the time. They share my posts. They might even comment on other people's things to say, have you read this book by Simon Mark Pryor? But they are authors who write in completely different genres to me. They write science fiction. Or they write space opera or whatever. So you never quite know who's going to be your biggest ally. So don't ever discount anybody from being an ally or friend or someone who's going to recommend your books.
Number 8.
If you want your book to sell loads of copies, take a look at other books that are selling loads of copies. And I'll give you a clue. They're mainly not memoir writers, they're writing fiction. And sure, as I've mentioned before, there are memoir writers, such as Gerald Durrell or Peter Mayle, that have become very, very successful. But the bulk of people who are very successful out of their books write fiction. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to write fiction. What it means is you may well benefit from incorporating some of the aspects of fiction writing into your memoir writing work. And just to give one example of this, let's talk about titles. Your title of your best-selling fiction book is probably short, it's probably snappy, and it intrigues you and draws you in and makes you want to know more. The number one best-selling book on Amazon is not called Bob and Gloria Move to Another Country, or Fred and Josephine Go on Holiday Somewhere. And by way of example, here are some best-selling fiction books. Just have a look at how short and snappy their titles are. John Grisham, The Summons. Dan Brown, Inferno, one word. Lee Child, Die Trying. Short, snappy, intriguing titles that make you want to pick up the book, open it, and find out more. So take a leaf out of fiction writers' books and give your book a title that makes people want to open it and have a look at what it's got to offer. Secondly, there's a massive temptation as memoir writers to write things chronologically. Chapter 1, this happened. Chapter 2, this happened. Chapter 3, then this happened. Chapter 4, something else happened. It doesn't really form a story. If you look at best-selling fiction authors, their books have a story. They've got a beginning, they've got a middle, and an end. Something happens during the book to transform their characters from whatever situation they were in at the beginning of the book to whatever situation they were in at the end of the book. And we can apply this to writing memoir, because memoir is all about a section of real life, and we can make a story out of it. We can make it so that our characters, which in most cases is us, transform in some way from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. And this is called an arc. It's essentially the book starts at a low point and raises in crescendo and comes back down to something that is linked back to the end point. And that is a big novel writing technique. And it's something that we should apply to memoir to make our books more interesting and make them better sellers. I strongly recommend that you have a look on the internet at things like the 7-plot story structure, or even have a look at, and this is a real phrase, Save the Cat Writes a Novel. So have a look at those story structures and see if you can apply some of them to your memoir writing.
Number 9.
Here's something that really caught me out. I thought I knew which parts of the Coconut Wireless were the funniest. I thought I knew which parts were the ones that would make people go, I thought I knew which parts would interest people most, and I was completely wrong. When I read the first reviews of the Coconut Wireless, I was amazed which sections people had put, "You're not going to believe this," or "I found this so funny," or "This particular phrase had me in stitches." There were scenes that I'd put in the book which I thought were of no consequence, which my reviewers found the most important part of the book. So you can never really tell which parts of your book people are going to enjoy most. So you need to just write your book as if people are going to enjoy all of it.
Number 10.
And finally, let this bring you joy. Let this bring you joy. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, your readers will actually be able to tell that when they read it. Your joy and your passion has to show in your writing. And the only way that that's going to show in your writing is if you enjoy what you do. If you don't, it has become a job. And the last thing you want is for your writing to become a job which is just trolled out day after day, paragraph after paragraph, and people will pick that up when they read your book. So please, let this bring you joy, and if it doesn't bring you joy, stop doing it. So those are my top 10 tips since I self-published my first book, The Coconut Wireless. If you want to find out more about me or about the travel humour books that I write, please visit my website at simonmichaelpryor.com. Thanks very much for watching, and see you on the next one.